Excuse me. You caught me in the middle of my note-taking. But that's always the case for good old Dr. Phineas Cortex now, is it? But it's good to see you again, my friends, on this glorious journey across the cosmos. But before we get into things, let's get right into the question of the day. Now, this one is from an Elijah, and he says, "Dear Dr. Cortex, how come there isn't any air or sound in space?" Well, that's a good question, and it's an easy answer for me as well. See, space in its entirety, that black veil that you see before you, it is something called a vacuum. A vacuum. Have you ever heard that term before, the vacuum of space? Well, that's where it comes from. You see, matter itself can only exist in clumps. These clumps we call particles, and these particles form into atoms, and these atoms form into molecules, and molecules into elements, and elements into materials, and all of these materials form the planets and stars that we see today. Now you see, and they all exist in this vacuum where nothing can exist. In fact, this vacuum of space can't even allow sound to travel through it, because it's just, that's all it is. It is a simple vacuum in space. Good question nonetheless. Now, as we go about today, we will be exploring a truly gargantuan subject. That is the planet Jupiter. Fire up the engines, computer. We're going to the titan of all planets. Now, Jupiter, as in its title, is named after the Roman king of the gods, as Jupiter is the king of all planets, so to say. It is 480 million miles from the solar system, sort of acting as the first of a class of solar system planets we like to call the gas giants. You know, all the other planets we studied before, they are signified as the rocky planets because they're made of all of these metals and rocks. Well, starting today, we are getting right into the gas giants. As you can see right here, the makeup of Jupiter is 90% hydrogen and 10% helium. Very light gases. As you can see right here, the atmosphere of Jupiter on the outside, of course, it's hydrogen and helium, but as you get in closer inside the planet, it is more dense, so to say, because of all these gases piling up and piling up and piling up. And at the very center of Jupiter, there is a dense ball of rock and ice, sort of keeping all of that together. Now, with all that being said, this amount of gases that make up Jupiter is quite large, so to say. As a matter of fact, say this is Jupiter right here, my lovely little drawing of Jupiter. And if you see right here, there is a small speck right here. That is Earth, my friends. For you see, Jupiter's diameter is over 89,000 miles wide. And it is enough to fit 1,300 Earth-sized planets. I mean, look, right here you see this big dot. That is called the Great Red Spot on Jupiter. And that alone, to give you sort of a perspective, can hold 3 Earths within it. We'll get to the big red dot in a second now. With the size of Jupiter and with the distance from the sun, its rotation and revolution periods are affected by it. But strangely enough, a day or rotation on Jupiter, if you will, is less than a rotation or day on Earth, clocking in at about 10 hours. However, with that distance you have here, that 480 million miles, the year on Jupiter is about 12 Earth years, because, you know, you're farther from the sun, you're going around the sun, therefore you have a longer time to go around the sun. It's simple logic, really. Now, going back to the makeup of Jupiter. Like I said before, it has a dense atmosphere, but with that density comes a brutal, weather forecast. Basically, it's very cold and it's very windy there. The winds around Jupiter blow at 155 to about 200 miles per hour. And that big red spot that I mentioned earlier, it's actually this huge raging storm. And the winds there can get up to 400 miles an hour. It's simply incredible. And the temperatures with that sort of wind speed are quite low as well. They're usually about 230 degrees Fahrenheit in the negative zone. That is to say, negative 230 degrees. So, very cold, very windy. You can survive, I'd say, less than a second within the atmosphere, so you probably don't want to visit there either, now would you? No, 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 no. Now, with the size of Jupiter, it is very magnetic, metallic in its core, you see, right here. There are some traces of metals actually in this core. I mentioned rock, you got that? But along with that, it has a high gravity pull. And with all this gravity around Jupiter, it can hold a lot of moons and satellites. As a matter of fact, as of right now, scientists have discovered nearly 80 moons on Jupiter, and they're all really diverse. As you can see, I have listed the major moons down below. I don't know if you can see that, but one of them is a moon called Io, and Io is the most volcanic body in space. I'm sure you've heard of me talking about Venus with its volcanoes and sulfur flares going on, but it's Io that really cranks up the heat when it comes to volcanic activity, so to say. Now, with that gravity in mind, Jupiter also has several rings along with its moons. You know, I'm sure you've heard of the rings of Saturn and how grand and massive they are. Well, Jupiter has rings as well, but quite frankly, they're too small to be seen from Earth. And even if somehow you're on the quote-unquote surface of Jupiter, you can only see its rings from the shadowy side of the planet. But, as dangerous as Jupiter might sound, it certainly is the king of all of the planets. And I must say, all this talk about Jupiter has really gotten me, so to say, hungry. But I know someone who can help, as many of you know. Jambot, my friend! Is it time for another, so to say, snack again?
There certainly is. I made another savory snack from the schematic side of the brew from the planet Jupiter. I call it, well, Essences of Jupiter. Here's what you need to do. Grab, let's see, 2 medium-sized apples, 1/3 cup of chunky peanut butter or soy butter, and optional fillings including granola bits and M&Ms. First, core each of the apples. Cut each apple crosswise into 6 slices and spread peanut butter over each slice. Sprinkle your sweet topping of choice and sandwich 2 slices together. That's what you need to do in order to make this scrumptious treat. Back to you, Dr. Cortex.
Why, thank you again, my comrade. I can already taste the apple and the peanut butter. Oh, so scrumptious. Well, my friends, I think it's almost time for me to go. And quite frankly, I don't remember what we're going to talk about next time. You know what, I'm going to go ahead and ask the computer. Excuse me for one moment. Computer, what are we going to discuss next time? There's that piece of paper again. And it appears that next time we are going to discuss the planet Saturn, famed for its rings, truly a marvelous planet, as with all of the rest, of course. Well, I'd like to give a huge shout out to Elijah, the question asker for today. Good question again. Keep sending those questions down below in the comments section, won't you? Excellent. Now, I bid you farewell, my friends. Let's blast off in 3, 2,